What up, Bren?
Hey, Cynthia.
How's it going?
It's going really good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was just traveling in Philly in your neck of the woods this past weekend, but I am back and excited actually to talk about the episode that we're releasing this week because it's with Chris Bush, who's this happiness expert for employee engagement. And I don't know, it just his story and a lot of what we talked about really resonated with me, not only because of what I'm going through, what I've been through in corporate, but also, just really felt like what he was experiencing that led him to his new career path was something that I think a lot of people go through either as some sort of like midlife crisis or I don't know what you would call it, but just like, life shift, which is, I guess mine is more, could be both, a little bit of both. Um, but yeah, it just really resonated with me. And I don't know, I'm curious. I know you edited it and we're going to release it tomorrow. So I wanted to hear what your thoughts were on it.
I mean, it's really interesting to hear from an expert on happiness, which is kind of a
Yeah.
topic. In my younger years, I wasn't sure if happiness was even a thing. Now, I don't
Oh,
mean that. Now, I did have some depression, but I also just sort of wondered, like, is happiness more of a personality trait? Because you ever
mm,
notice, like, some people just seem to see life positively. They're just enjoying everything. You're
yeah.
always like, what's up with them?
uh, I know. And some of it is genetic from what I
Yeah, I
read.
think so.
Yeah.
Um, but there's also, lifestyle attributes and also mindset that goes along with that. His story was pretty powerful. I mean, he talked about how he was really good at school, a really high achiever. He was doing all the AP classes, got to a really top college, and was just crushing it there. And he ended up, getting a nice job. I guess it was what was it, pharmaceutical software company? Sounded like.
He was working for an electronic medical record company, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. That's how,
Yeah.
when I looked at his profile, so I worked for also a competitor of the company he worked for.
Yeah.
And that's
So
how we,
he was
yeah.
making decent money, but he was getting depressed so much that so that he got diagnosed with clinical depression. It seemed
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that sort of led him on this journey of trying to figure out, well, if the money from this job wasn't making me happy, then what would it be? And he took the bold step of actually leaving that career and going off on his own to become a coach, kind of study happiness and figure out, what the components were, which I thought was really brave.
It, it is very, very brave. Yeah. He didn't have any real, I think, path that he knew he was going to take. I think he was just sort of like, I just can't go forward with this. And so I'm going to stop. And that's really scary.
Yeah, he
I
just
don't know that many people that do that.
no, he just pulled together what savings he had and moved to Beijing
Yeah. Yeah.
and just started to dig deep. And he kind of traveled the world, it seems like, and was asking people about happiness in different cultures. And he learned a whole bunch of stuff, a lot of
Yeah.
which he shared in the episode. It
Yeah.
was cool.
Yeah. He is. Yeah. He was a really interesting guest.
I
I,
mean,
oh, go ahead.
one thing I was really like cluing into was that some of the things he did. So he found that antidepressants weren't that helpful, and
Yeah.
since then he's like done some research on that. And he cited a statistic. I think it was like 1988 to 2011. Antidepressant use increased something like 400%, but measures of happiness didn't really change much at all.
Yeah.
So it makes you kind of question like the effectiveness of some of those drugs. But what did work for him was he said he cut his alcohol intake a lot. I guess he was saying like in the where he's from, Wisconsin, I think.
Wisconsin. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, he was like
Yeah.
it's there's kind of a drinking culture there, like just a lot of beer drink. I guess he says because it's cold, but or whatever. But he was doing like a lot of social drinking, and
Yeah.
he cut back on that, and that helped a lot. And then he sort of started working on his relationships, and at work where he had sort of been struggling with his team, when he started to really focus on each one of them as people, and his leadership skills improved, his communication, he started like uh being better friend. So like instead of using social media to just click like on someone's birthday, he actually calls them on their birthday, which I thought was really cool. So like
Yeah.
strengthening relationships, he cut out video games and junk food and replaced it with going to the gym and reading and forming relationships. And over that, he sort of became a new person. And I thought that was pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in general, a lot of people, it's easy, I'll say, in our culture to turn to medication because it, for many people probably feels like a quick fix. And no one really wants to be sitting in their depression or sitting in their anxiety or, whatever, negative, whatever emotion they might be feeling. And, unfortunately, pharmaceuticals have made it really easy to take a pill, go to your doctor and get a pill. And I really love that he did the work. I mean, I think at the core of it, I don't think anyone actually, maybe in some cases like with postpartum depression, but I think overall, I think most people are just finding another way to numb themselves. And actually, we've talked about this in other episodes, right? Like, where you use some tool really as a means to just sort of negate whatever you're feeling because you don't really want to feel it. And it's no different with a pill that you take. So I just love that he did the work and is now here to tell about it and talk to corporations about making their employees happy and, how can they be essentially be in better relationship with their employees, which I think is, for me, something that I've stepped out of corporate now, but have been interested in and fascinated by because I do think I don't know, in our society that it seems like there's like we kind of bow down to the almighty corporation because they give us jobs, right? And the jobs pay our bills. But I think many people are unfulfilled and finding different outlets to numb themselves. And Chris just was like, I'm not going to do that. I need to figure this out.
Yeah, and he works in two areas. He works on sort of the personal area where you can go and watch his TED Talk, for example, where he talks about his MESH method of taking care of your brain.
Yeah.
And MESH
Yeah.
is meditation, exercise, sleep, and hydration.
Yeah.
And I think all of us could say that we fall a little short in maybe one of those areas or two or three.
Probably.
If you're falling short on all four, you're probably not feeling too great today.
Probably.
So I recommend going to watch his TED Talk.
Yeah.
That was really cool. But he's also working on the corporate level where he travels and actually he's a keynote speaker and he does staff trainings and stuff like that. It seemed like where he'll talk about, having a good workplace culture. He talked a lot in the interview about how companies need to pay people in more than one currency and not just money.
Yeah.
He talked about how in places like Germany, they have like these incredible amounts of time off. I forget how many days it was, something like 30 days, I want to say.
Yeah, it's upwards of 30 days, something. I think in many European countries, it's something like 6 weeks, actually. It's sort of like I don't want to call it socialized, but some sort of standard holiday
Yes.
they get. Yeah.
And on top of that, some companies have rules where they're not allowed to contact you after 5 p.m. or while you're on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is pretty incredible. Sorry, I have something in my eye.
No, you're all right.
I'm like, yeah, I feel like the boundaries, and actually, there was a post recently that went viral. I don't know if you saw this on LinkedIn. It's from this guy, Ian Sohn. I think I'm pronouncing his last name right. He's president of Wonderman, which is an agency, and he wrote about how essentially we've infantilized our workforce, that we expect them to, we parent them because, I guess in some way, right, where we have some expectation about how, when they're working, how often they're working, where they're working. And he wrote this article or LinkedIn post, it went viral. But he talks in there about, in one instance, a colleague called him and said, you need to be somewhere, you need to get on a plane and be somewhere in 12 hours. And he was like, I just can't do that. I'm a single dad and I've got my kids. And he felt bad saying that to this, superior who had called him to say that. But ultimately, he knew and felt like he made the right decision. And I think, in our culture right now, it is, having another form of currency where you actually feel like you are done with your day, among other things, and maybe
Yeah.
having more vacation time, I think is like what is huge. I mean, there are so many, I can't even count the number of times in my last corporate job where I got a call after hours, I got a Slack message after hours, um, or, someone, I mean, sometimes it was even on the weekends, someone was calling me on the weekend, and yes, I was in a senior role, but it's inexcusable unless it's a true emergency, like a client needs something by Monday. But I was always kind of appalled that it had gotten to that point for me in my career even.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope in this country and around the world we can get to the point where it becomes really rude, considered extremely rude to call an employee after hours and make them do stuff. I mean, that should just be the. I mean, we know things break and blow up, and sometimes it's all hands on deck. We understand that, but it shouldn't be all the time. It shouldn't be mandatory.
Yeah,
That's really toxic.
it is really toxic. Yeah, yeah. I've had a couple organizations that bought into that, but yeah, I just for me it ended up leading to my burnout. Like
Yeah.
having that type of life, and I think same for Chris, right? Like in a different way. I mean, he was just not happy with some of what was going on. The type of work he was doing. I think ultimately, but also he was just working incessantly for a period of time, and ultimately, it does lead to burnout. And then you either start finding ways to numb yourself, like I said, or I think oftentimes it does lead to other mental health issues where yeah, sure, you want to hit you consider maybe taking a pill because it feels that bad at that point.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about how he would say, "Well, I feel awful and I'm not enjoying myself, but if only I just made when I get that money, then
Yeah,
it's going to be worth it. Then it's going to be worth it." But what he realized was that trading freedom for money after a certain point isn't a great deal.
right,
He cited this study I think most people have heard that, earning over $80,000 a year doesn't really make you that much happier.
right.
There's a diminishing return. Like we need enough to meet our needs, but after that, happiness isn't derived from money. It's freedom itself
Mhm.
that makes you happy, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean that definitely is something for me that I had been focused on after I left corporate. I didn't want to be beholden to any person or thing. And I mean, obviously we do the podcast and this is this is absolute fun and joy for me. Um but I took a risk and decided to be a contractor in part because I was really tired of feeling like I had to answer to somebody if I wanted to take more vacation than was allowed at a company, even though at the end of the day, the metric for me of success is did I get my work done and did I do it well? And that's what I feel it should be for everybody. But it didn't matter, like those were the company rules. So I just didn't want to have to answer to anybody anymore. I didn't want to have to deal with, did I get back to my boss's email in time, with enough time? Do I have a client fire drill from somebody? I just, now I'm in control of my own fate, and it's very different, but it's also a lot of risk, a lot of reward. And I think in general, I just feel a lot happier because I don't wake up and feel like I immediately have to check my email, and that might screw up when I'm able to work out or when I'm able to meditate and do like my morning routine. Just a whole other level of freedom.
Yeah. Email is just the worst, isn't it?
That's the worst.
We need to science needs to figure out some way that we don't need to email anymore. If we could get to that level.
Yeah. Yeah. You.
Because some huge amount of time, even in office, is spent emailing. It's some huge percentage. It's a huge waste of time.
I do feel like when you send attachments, like there's value in that because you're actually sending something. But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, most of my day right now I do spend, unfortunately, on email. But it's because I'm trying to, win the next round of contracts for myself. And also, some of our stuff that we do for the podcast does require email. But yeah, it's a total time. I go into, it's a vortex. Yeah. I go down a rabbit hole.
So many vortexes. And he did say at the end, you had him list off, different factors, pro or con towards happiness. The first one you said was social media, and like right away he's like 10 out of 10. It's awful for your mental health.
Yeah.
And I think, it's these rabbit holes.
I know. Yeah. We did a whole episode on how to stop the mindless scrolling. Yeah.
But everybody, so this episode is number 69 of the Goal Magic Podcast. You can find it on goalmagic.co or wherever you get your podcasts. We have barely scratched the surface in this conversation of the tidbits that he had. So I think everyone should go and listen to that full episode. More than an hour of juicy information about happiness.
Yeah, his story, he was just talking and I let him go. His story really had some incredible highs and lows that I think everyone can relate to.
Yeah, and he's really funny too.
He is very funny, yeah.
Yes.
He's a great guy.
And he acknowledged me in the podcast, even though I wasn't there. I was like, wow, this guy's really good with people.
Aww. Yeah, no, he's a great one. He has a book out too. I think his book is actually changing titles, but I believe it was something like the Millennial's Guide to Happiness, I think was his book. I think that he's taking millennial out of there and just keeping it as like a guide to happiness, from what I understand. But yeah, he's an incredible guest. Loved having him. Just really easy conversation. Check him out.
Yeah, Chris, don't exclude us Gen Xers. Come on, we need happiness too.
That's right, Brendan.
We're not too old to be happy.
Right, you're a different generation than me. I forget that sometimes.
Anything else? Any other burning comments from the Chris Bush episode?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Actually, the one thing we were just talking about, he says, I don't want to give all of the episode away, and there's still a lot of good nuggets in there, but he actually says that part of what drove him or what drives him now is this other metric of how happy can I make other people. And I just like that. I totally get where he's coming from, because when I'll gift, a little something to my niece, or I'll gift a little something to Ray, and seeing how happy it makes them or how excited they get is something that, I just couldn't recreate in another forum. And I feel that the more that we actually are able to give to other people, the more we actually give back to ourselves, and the more we actually get, and I mean, this is just in general, like I very much try to, especially in my professional network, to connect people or help people as much as I can. Mostly I enjoy it, but also I do feel like ultimately it's karma. It will come back to me in some way. And now that I'm a free agent, it's like, I feel like, I don't want to say that I can collect, but that I have that equity with people now where they know me, they know what I'm about, they know what kind of person I am, and they're willing to do me a favor or make an introduction or do something that maybe they wouldn't have had I not actually put myself out there. So just wanted to add that in, because I really do. I love that metric that Chris talks about. I thought that was really, really cool and profound.
I love it. So wise. Yeah. I mean, it makes you happy to make other people happy. It just bounces back to you every single time. So who wants to stand around being like, how do I make myself happy today? Think about how to make someone else happy.
I think Trump does that though. So
I think think a lot of people do, but I don't necessarily want to be their friend.
Like, yeah, I don't really want Trump in my circle.
All right.
All right, Bren.
Well,
This
that's
was
after show number 2 and episode 69. Everybody
amazing.
go check that out on Gold Magic. Have a good one.